Welcome to another episode of Under Review. Today I will be discussing potential landing spots for some of the NFL's biggest free agents that are still on the market. And also, with the Raiders franchise officially moving to Las Vegas, which NFL team or teams do I think are next to relocate? With that being said, let's get started. The first free agent on my list is Cam Newton. I think if the NFL offseason schedule was going as planned and teams were able to give players physicals and see them in person, he would have already been signed. It also doesn't help that the Carolina Panthers kind of did him dirty by waiting until the end of the first free agency wave to tell him that he can go look for a trade when every team already had their quarterback situation figured out. When healthy, Cam Newton's still a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, if you ask me. His size at 6'5", his build at around 265, 270, I think. Still has his top speed, has quarterback knowledge, knows how to read defenses still. He can still do everything perfectly fine. It's just lately he hasn't been able to stay on the field as much as he'd like to. And I think that's caused people to have a little bit of a recency bias and kind of forget how good Cam Newton really is. But my best fit for Cam Newton would be going to the LA Chargers. I know Anthony Lynn, their head coach, said that him and Tyrod Taylor are pretty much the same player, which I think is just all mind games to have people not exactly go after Cam Newton. There's no doubt that if Cam Newton was on that team, they'd be a contender without a doubt. I think them and Kansas City would be coming out of that division in the AFC West. But if you look at the weapons with the Chargers, Cam Newton would be having a field day. You know, when he was in Carolina and towards the end, he pretty much only had McCaffrey. Do it all back, which was good, but wasn't exactly enough. He obviously needed more, and so if he were to go to the Chargers, he's got a reliable and fast receiver in Keenan Allen, who's hitting his prime. If not, he's already in his prime, still in it regardless. Mike Williams is another receiver who's coming into his own as a reliable wide receiver. Hunter Henry, the tight end, is finally healthy, and when he's on the field, he's a really big game changer. Austin Eckler in the backfield, it's now his show after Melvin Gordon left in free agency. And last year when Gordon was holding out, he showed his potential and he had a breakout season. So I think if you add Cam, who can run it himself, who can still throw the ball all over the field without a doubt, I think that offense opens up, and I think it causes defense to spend a little bit more time on how can we really guard this defense. Who do we look at the most? Who do we pay attention to the most? I think it causes defenses to sit back more, opens up a lot more of the field in the intermediate game, in the quick pass game, the run game. So I think overall adding Cam Newton to this team would, like I said, turn them into a contender. I don't know about Super Bowl contender. Like I said, it all depends on Cam's health at the end of the day. But I do think they'd be in the playoffs. That wouldn't be a question for me. And also another big thing for Cam Newton going to LA is ticket sales. At the end of the day, the NFL is a business, and every team is a business, and they want to make sure that their bottom line is not being affected. And I think the Chargers, once they moved to LA, they haven't exactly had the fan base that they had in San Diego, and especially with the Rams taking most of those fans so far. But they're moving into a new stadium now with the Rams, and I think it seats like 80,000, 90,000 people. So I think if you want to avoid about 75% of those people being fans of the other team, you go and get star players. They need star players. They have talent, but they don't have that star player. That's why they went after Tom Brady, but it didn't exactly work. So if you get Cam Newton, he's a known talent in the NFL. He's very good. Like I said, top 10 quarterback. I think that puts more of your own fans in the stadium instead of going out and 3/4 of them are wearing other teams' colors. I don't think if they don't get known commodities anytime soon, I don't know how long they would last in LA, but I think a good start would be you sign Cam Newton to run the offense and be the head of the most important position in all the sports. The next free agent on my list is Jameis Winston. It's hard to believe that somebody who led the league in interceptions last year with 30 interceptions, also led the league in passing yards, and still threw for 33 touchdowns. I mean, it just shows how Jekyll and Hyde Jameis Winston's play really is. And the thing is, if he can just work on his decision making, Jameis Winston has all the talent in the world to be a top level quarterback. I mean, he was a first overall pick for a reason. It didn't just happen, on accident. And so my perfect fit for him would be going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think having a coach like Mike Tomlin, who has kept the Steelers in contention in the playoffs every year since he took over in 2007. He's a well-respected coach, and I think he knows how to get the most out of his players. I think Jameis Winston could learn a lot from him. I think he could. I mean, people like to talk about how Bruce Arians is a quarterback guru, and if he couldn't fix him, then who will, type of thing. Well, at the same time, I understand that Bruce Arians is a good coach, but he only had 1 year with Jameis Winston. He only kept him for 1 year, and then they went and got Tom Brady. So I think that you can't expect someone to change something that they're accustomed to doing, to change their habits in 1 year while also trying to learn a whole new offense and system. I mean, it's just not fair to expect him to do that. I mean, maybe some quarterbacks can, but I don't think it's fair to expect people to do that. So I don't think he had a fair shot in his ending with Tampa. I think if he went to Pittsburgh, not only would he learn under Mike Tomlin, but there's got to be a coach out there, and I think Tomlin is the one who would want to. There's got to be a coach out there who thinks he can be the one who can change Jameis Winston, that he can be the one who I can get his turnovers to go down to, maybe 15, 20, and, help make us a contender. I also think that he gets to sit behind Big Ben, who is a future Hall of Famer, maybe first ballot, won a Super Bowl, and he's feeling better than ever now that he had that elbow surgery in the offseason. So he's at full health. And, Jameis isn't going there to compete for a starting job. That's not happening. But I do think that if he gets to sit behind Ben for the final few years of his career, however much longer he has left, he gets to learn the system without being thrown into the fire. He gets to learn from two well-respected men in the league, in Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger. And he just gets, whether it be in practice, in game, calling him up, anything like that, he'll have front row access to be able to ask Ben Roethlisberger any question he wants, any concerns he has. What would I do on this route? What would I check to in this situation? He has it all at his disposal, and like I said, he won't have to be thrown to the fire and play through the game, so he can actually just sit there and observe and maybe fine tune and iron out his flaws, which to me, like I said, is really only his turnovers. I do think that he would be the starter in the next 2-3 years when Ben does retire. I don't think Jameis is done in the league. I don't think he's washed. I don't think he's still very young. I think that, like I said, if someone can iron out those turnovers and limit them, even if you get rid of 10 of them, but still keeping his passing yards and his touchdowns somewhere around that average, I think he is a top 10 quarterback without question. And so I think if he were to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason, he would rejuvenate his career and be a starter in this league. The last free agent that I'll be talking about is Jadeveon Clowney. I think him, along with Cam Newton, when healthy, can be an absolute game wrecker and a game changer. When he was in Houston, he was an absolute game wrecker, like I said. Playing opposite of J.J. Watt, who demanded double teams. He had a lot of one-on-one matchups, and he would absolutely feast on it. He would be in the backfield God knows how many times. What I like about him is he's also kind of like a hybrid player. He can also be like a stand-up linebacker. He's very good in coverage as well. He's very good at decoys and stunts and all those things. When he went to Seattle, I do think that he didn't show what he did in Houston per se, but he showed flashes of what his potential truly can be, especially if people remember that primetime game he had in San Francisco that went to overtime, that thriller, and he dominated. He made Jimmy Garoppolo's night a living hell. It was not a fun night for Jimmy G, that's for sure. The only problem is he's been demanding $20 million a year, and he just recently lowered his demand to, I think, 17 or 18 per year. I think he sees that no team is going to pay him that, and I don't blame them considering the injury history and the fact that he hasn't consistently been that game wrecker that he can be. Um, I was initially a little critical when the Texans traded Clowney, and they didn't really get too much back because they didn't want to pay him. But I think as time goes on, it kind of looks like a very smart deal, and I think they knew what they were doing. But yeah, I think in the end, I think that Jadeveon Clowney's best fit would be going to the Miami Dolphins. As I mentioned before with the Dolphins, they have a lot of cap space, and you might as well use it. Use it while you can. You don't really have to pay any of your young players. Most of your young players are going to be from last year's draft, or they're going to be in this draft, where they have, I think 10 picks, maybe more. So you already spent money on your back end with Byron Jones. You're solid with Xavier Howard. Your defensive line has some pieces. Christian Wilkins out of Clemson, he picked last year. He's going to be good. You just signed Shaq Lawson in free agency. He's a proven commodity. I think he's he's not a superstar, but he could be a star in this league. So I think if you had Jadeveon Clowney along that front, and like I said, he could also play linebacker if he had to with Kyle Van Noy beside him. He'd be in the backfield almost every play as well. I think he'd be back to his Houston days. The only difference would be that he would be demanding double teams, which in turn wouldn't really be that bad because then Wilkins and Shaq Lawson would get the one-on-one opportunities to be in the backfield, and they'd be causing havoc and they'd be disrupting the quarterback all game long. And so I think if you had a front with Lawson, Wilkins, and Clowney, excuse me, I think that would be one of the best lines in football. And not only that, but they wouldn't have to worry too much in the back end because they know that Howard and Byron Jones are going to have good coverage. There's not many opportunities that quarterback's going to have to really have open guys. So they don't have to worry about getting there at necessarily every play or worry that someone's going to be open downfield. So I think if the Dolphins can do that, now I don't know if they're actually looking at Clowney. I don't see why not. Like I said, with the cap money you have, you might as well look at everyone. So I think that if they were to get Jadeveon Clowney to go with along with the defense that they built or are building, I think that really helps speed up their rebuild. I think their defense might be top 10 next year. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's definitely possible. But the Dolphins, Tom Brady's out of the AFC East, and so the Dolphins have as good as chances. I mean, the Bills are the favorite, and of course, I understand why. But if you can build that defense to be elite, and your offense just needs solid production, because they have pieces on the offensive side, they just need a quarterback, which we're all expecting that they did with that 5th pick, they'd be a very competitive team next year. At the very least, you want to be competitive in your games. You don't want blowouts every Sunday. So I think if they're competitive, they can probably get they have the potential to flirt with a wild card spot. I don't think they'll be there next year. I think they'll still be that 6-7 win team. But at the end of the day, I think that signing Jadeveon Clowney is a big cornerstone piece on your team, especially when they're relatively young and you're not exactly paying a lot of your team yet. So pay for those big pieces now. Let them be the cornerstones of your rebuild. And within a year or two, you'll be competing season in, season out. The Raiders franchise has officially moved to Las Vegas, and they will begin playing Nevada during the 2020 season. So that had me thinking, which NFL teams currently might be on the move? Maybe not in the near future, but maybe 5 to 10 years down the road. So the first team that came to my head were the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've never really been good at having their stands filled, and they don't always at maximum capacity. They haven't had a lot of good years on the field besides maybe their 2017 AFC Championship in the last decade. And so I think that's why they're the team that plays at least one game over in the UK, and it being a home game. And now starting this season, they're going to be playing 2 of their home games. So only 6 games will actually be in Jacksonville. 2 will be over in London. And so you start to think that, maybe their owner, Shad Khan, who also owns one of the Premier League teams, I believe it's Arsenal, is just keeping the idea open of them being the first permanently based team out in the UK or somewhere outside the US. I know that the NFL has constantly tried to look at ways they flirted with the idea of getting a team out in the UK. I don't know how that's going to work personally. I don't know how I feel about that. I think the NFL should stay in the US. I don't know if it's that big a deal, but just in terms of travel and players, how many players would really want to play their home games in Europe? how you would have to come to the U.S. every time you had an away game, the time change, all that stuff. There'd be a lot of metrics that need to be worked out. But in terms of teams I think would want to go, I think Jacksonville is at the top of that list for the reasons I just mentioned. He's never Shad Khan has never shied away from that idea, and neither has the NFL. And I think that's why that rumor is still swirling around. And I think now that you see that they're increasing the amount of home games that they'll be playing in the UK, I do think that they might be on the move eventually. But no one knows for sure, obviously. The next team I think about is the LA Chargers. And, I just finished talking about them because of Cam Newton, and I think that Cam Newton would really help them get people in the stands. I know they're moving to a new stadium. I know they just relocated, so the chances of them actually leaving LA are probably slim to none, at least in the next 10 years or so. That wouldn't make any sense. But ever since they left San Diego, they haven't had the following that they should. And part of it is because the city of LA and California in general, for their pro sports teams, one, they have so many teams. You got Clippers, you got Lakers, you got the Galaxy, you got the Rams, you got the Kings, and California in general has, Sacramento in basketball, San Jose and Anaheim in hockey, Anaheim in baseball, and so forth. And so not only do they have a lot of competition, but LA seems to be a city that loves the flash. They love the spotlight. They love all the talent, all the stars. Those are the people that they attract. And I think that the Rams have really taken advantage of that in their first few years. The Coliseum, which holds a lot of people, I think it might be almost around 100,000, was more or less, I think it got to like 70,000 people for Rams games, maybe even 80. And so the Rams did their part in getting star talent to come to LA to play for the Rams, and already you saw how people flock to the Rams, and pretty much the Rams are LA's team out of them and the Chargers. It didn't help that the Chargers had to go play in a soccer stadium. They only held like probably 30,000 people, so that didn't help them. But at the same time, if you go back and watch those games at that stadium, I think it was StubHub Arena or StubHub Center, so I don't know the name exactly, so forgive me for that. But 3/4 of those fans were all the opposing team. I remember watching them on, I think it was Sunday Night Football. It was the Steelers and the Chargers, and 3/4 of that stadium was wearing black and gold, like maybe even more. It was insane. So they're not getting the fan base. They're not getting fans to come out as well as I think they thought they should. San Diego was definitely loyal to them. They should have never, in my opinion, they should have never left. They should have just redone the stadium or made a new stadium. But this is the predicament they're in now, and so they're gonna have to figure out a way to get fans to the game. I mean, like I said, besides getting star talent, that's why they went after. Like I said, that's why they went after Tom Brady so heavily. Because if you get a guy like Tom Brady, a legend, arguably the greatest of all time, to come to your team, then people want to come watch you. That's just how it goes. Like I said, at the end of the day, the NFL is a business, and it's about putting butts in seats to make your bottom line in a negative way. So I think the Chargers will figure it out. I think once the Rams are starting to tail off a bit in talent and in winning. So maybe this is the chance. The Chargers have the better team, I think, right now. So this is their chance to really capitalize. Will they? Won't they? That remains to be seen. But I do think that if I had to pick teams to relocate, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but those are the two teams that I think of. I think Jacksonville is already trying to maybe push the whole Europe thing. LA Chargers might not move, but if they can get people in the seats, I just don't know what they should do. And so I think that it comes down to the Chargers and the Jaguars as the two front-running teams to be relocated and be moving in the NFL. That is the end of today's episode. As always, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, have a good day.